All right, we are back.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Oilers Nation Radio, episode 37. We are listening to Dead Silence, courtesy of Tyler Yaremchuk.
This is my favorite kind of music.
Show producer.
I'm not really a music guy.
This one's climbing up the charts, isn't it?
I prefer just listening to Dead Silence.
You know what? It's just like, it's a peaceful moment that we can all share together where we just sit in silence and nothing happens.
I still think we should have sang our own intro.
Okay, let's try. Let's go.
All right.
You guys are going to do your own intro.
Okay, we already
go. Go ahead.
Do 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 do.
You're listening to Oilers Nation Radio, brought to you by the Nation Network.
There we go.
See,
That was nice.
That's a good energy right there. That's positive energy on the podcast now.
Welcome to episode 37 of Oilers Nation Radio. We want to start off, as always, by giving a shout out to our friends at Sherwood Ford the Giant in beautiful Sherwood Park, Alberta. You can go ahead and follow them on Twitter at Sherwood Ford and on Instagram at Sherwood_Ford the Giant. Christopher, what kind of fun and interesting things does Sherwood Ford have going on right now?
Guess who's prepared today and has the webpage up on my browser? I am.
Go ahead.
Sherwood Ford's big charity event coming up in June is they're partnering with, or they're sponsoring Racing for a Cure to support the Stollery Children's Hospital Foundation. So for every test drive they give away in June, they're going to be donating to the Stollery. And they've got a big event on June 22nd. There's going to be a parade where a bunch of VIP Stollery patients will be sitting in a bunch of fancy cars going through the parade. The Nation truck will be in the parade, our very own. And it tours around downtown and then finishes up at the legislative grounds where there's going to be like a big fair, a bunch of activities going on. So they're expecting like thousands of people to show up. It's going to be a very big event in Edmonton. So plan your day around that.
Speaking of the Nation truck, as always, if you see that beauty driving around the city, take a picture and tag it on social media with hashtag Nation truck, and you will be entered to win a $100 gas card.
I'm going to hop in here for a second, making my podcast debut.
Wow.
On Real Life, for people that listen to Real Life and This, I'm Tyler Yaremchuk, the new show producer. For people that listen to Real Life and This, you brought up the Eskimos trade of Ricky Ray on Nation Real Life.
I did.
And then you said they got Steven Giles and a kicker.
Yeah.
And then Wanye said, well, the kicker, wasn't he murdered? And you guys all agreed with it. The kicker is Grant Shaw, and he's a sales associate at Sherwood Ford. So I just want to get that out there right now. The kicker from the Ricky Ray trade was not murdered.
Was he upset by that? Was he upset about that?
No, he hasn't reached out to me. I just know that.
Oh.
To be fair, I didn't agree with that point. I zoned out of that conversation because it was way above my head.
Yeah, I would also agree that I didn't agree with anything that you just
Don't
said.
put words in our mouth,
I don't
Tyler.
know anything about the CFL. In fact, I know Ricky Ray just because I've known that name. I could not name two Eskimos right now.
Do you guys remember there was a Leafs game when they were playing the Coyotes, and Paul Romanuk, the play-by-play announcer, because Jacob Chychrun plays for the Coyotes, right? And he said Jeff Chychrun, his dad, the former NHL player, died, which wasn't accurate. And there was just this long pause in the broadcast, and then like 20 minutes later he comes back, he's like, my apologies to Jeff Chychrun, who is alive and well, has not passed away.
That's so funny.
Oh, man. Well, thankfully, nobody listens to Real Life. There's like 10 people, and thanks to Tyler for bringing that up again on this one.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Wanye definitely was like just joking there.
I don't think he was.
Because I know
Wanye doesn't know shit about the CFL.
If Bag Milk knows nothing about the CFL, Wanye knows less.
So throughout the podcast now, if we mention anybody being dead, or even if we mention possibly a dead person being alive, Tyler will jump in and ensure that is
accurate.
We don't want to be saying anything that isn't correct on the podcast.
Tyler's new role is fact-checking all of us, so make sure to
You're
have
like
your
our
Google
Tony
machine.
Reale. You just sit there and you can correct us.
Shout out to all of us for being on the Real Life podcast this week, too.
It was a big show. Big show on Monday. If you haven't heard the Real Life podcast, go and check that out wherever you get your podcasts from.
Someone called it Taking Your Kids to Work Day.
It basically was.
Wait, whose kid?
You're all my children.
Well,
You're
then this
all
is
my
taking your
children.
kids to work day too.
That's right.
Every day is taking your kids to work day.
Hell yeah.
Back to business, boys. I want to talk about some Oilers. The big news du jour, du week, or whatever you want to say, is that Craig McTavish signed a 2-year contract to be a HC Locomotive's head coach. Mac T is back behind the bench. looking at the comment section from the article I wrote for the news release, I knew people were going to be happy that Mac T was gone because he's the old boys club and whatever. I get all that. But there was a part of the article where I wrote, I think most people could agree that Mac T was a very productive member of the organization for a long time. And that single phrase sentence was what really pissed a bunch of people off. And I just didn't understand why they were disagreeing with it. Like, I can understand why you're mad that the Oilers are bad.
You can't look objectively at anything, Bag Milk.
He was a player here for 9 years. He was a coach for 9 years. He did all kinds of weird jobs. He ripped Harvey the Hound's tongue out. Come on.
I think of all the members of the old boys club, Mac T was never a guy I really had an issue with. I thought, his gig this year was overseeing the Condors, right? That was part of what he did. The Condors had a good year.
He was the senior VP of hockey operations.
And I remember, part of his gig was helping out with Bakersfield. I don't know what that day-to-day would look like, but I remember reading somewhere that was like his... Even when he was GM, was he that bad? Was he that bad?
He made weird calls. Like, the one I think of specifically was where he's like, I'm going to challenge Jeff Petrie on a 1-year contract and let him walk away for free. And then he's like, Justin Schultz has Norris potential.
Yeah. And trading a pick for Nikita Nikitin's rights.
Yeah. Like, there was some bizarre deals. There was also some decent deals. Like, I remember he pulled the trigger on the
Perron? He acquired Perron. That was a good trade. He also flipped Perron for a first-round pick that Pete Chiarelli fucked away in the Griffin Reinhart basically,
trade.
like, if he ended up drafting Matt Barzal in that spot, you turn Magnus Pajärvi into Matt Barzal in the span of 2 years?
Yeah.
It's not bad.
That's legit. So there was ups and downs. I think Mac T, he only had 2 seasons at the GM before he got the demoted or whatever you want to call it in favor of Peter Chiarelli. So that's super weird. But one thing I wanted to bring up as we're talking about him is, Tyler, I assume this was you? The tweet about Mac T in best memory from his time here?
Yeah, that was me.
So Tyler is putting out the tweets. So he says, now that he's officially gone to Russia, this is from Oilers Nation Radio's Twitter account at ON Radio Podcast. Now that he's officially gone to Russia, what's your favorite Craig McTavish memory from his time with the team? And there's a lot of great ones. So I just kind of want to go through a couple. If you got your own, I'd love to hear them. There's a lot of ripping Harvey the Hound's tongue out. Everybody loves that one. Great one. Classic. If you didn't know, or if you're 6 years old or you're 12 and you're too young to remember, Harvey the Hound, the mascot for the Calgary Flames, poked his little head over the glass behind the Oilers bench, and Mac T turned around and ripped that old tongue out. Chucked her back out in the stands, the Saddle Dome, and the Saddle Dome hasn't changed at all since. It is still a piece of shit.
That is an old Harvey the Hound costume, though, because his costume was destroyed in the flood of 2000 and whatever.
Was it? I didn't know.
Yeah, there's a really creepy photo out there if you look it up of his head just laying in mud. It's weird.
Is that real?
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Harvey the Hound. So it's like he's Snowball 2.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yes.
So I just want to go through some of these reactions. I want to get your reactions. Oh man, Tyler! Tyler just found the picture of Harvey the Hound's head. We'll put that up on our social. That is creepy as all hell.
Never forget that arena was flooded up to like the 8th row of the lower bowl.
That was terrifying.
With poo water. It was all pooey water because that river is poo. Because it's Calgary. I'm just gonna wait for Yaremchuk to correct me on this one.
Fact checker? He's just staring at Dan blankly.
I think the thing to do is we're going to ask Tyler to fact check something, and I'm not going to pass him the mic.
Yeah, I think that's important. I just want to make this as uncomfortable and weird as possible. So going through again, I want to get some reactions. Harvey the Hound, there's a lot of that. This guy's was pretty funny. Two-turn Larry comes in with, the first time I heard the heckle, "Hey McTavish, your helmet needs a haircut." It's odd, but last player to not wear a helmet. Average sports fan says that time he got a job in Russia. See what he did there?
I gotta jump in here. Does anyone else feel bad for him? Out of all the places in the world to go coach, he has to go to Russia.
Yeah, but
it is interesting.
So Locomotive had the plane crash there a couple of years ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, Yaremchuk,
no,
but I
right.
think that they took like players from other teams, like it was kind of a work together of the entire league to make a new team. So I don't think there's a lot of pressure there for them to succeed. Like it's almost like he's taking over an expansion team.
Yeah, and I think they've been okay. The one thing though, why would you feel bad for him? It was his choice. It's not like he got traded to Russia. He could have went to Vancouver and just lived on his money and been fine.
Question, Tyler.
Yeah.
Do you think this was in the works for a while now, or when Mac T saw that there was a new regime coming in, might as well start putting your ducks in a row before you get shit canned by Ken Holland?
I 100% think that Ken Holland had a conversation with him. I think Ken Holland probably said something along the lines of, hey, we're probably going to be moving a different way with a lot of things, there is going to be a lot of turnover with the staff. And I feel like he just kind of read the writing on the wall and said, I'm going to get out before they fire me type of thing. But when people say like they wanted Ken Holland to come in and get rid of the old boys club and the old regime, I read this move here as step one of Ken Holland doing that.
Well, I like it that he got to like visually he gets to walk away. He gets to like handshake and walk away, whereas I know a lot of people wanted to see blood. They want to see heads chopped off, and they want to, they want to see him come out, Ken come out and go, okay, this guy's fired, this guy's fired, this guy's fired. And for the most part, people probably want to see him say why. Well, this guy's fired because of this. He sucked here, he sucked there. So watching him walk away on his own and kind of just no rumors, no nothing, it makes me feel good about this breakup, because I do think he's been around forever, and I think he was a really good coach, and I don't know if he ever should have been GM, but just from his coaching and his playing days, I'm glad he's able to just walk away and just kind of do it clean.
I totally agree with that thought. I do feel like Holland told him like he needs to find a new job this summer, but out of all the places, like I think you just hear all these horror stories of like players in Russia, and like out of all the places to just, if you want to live for the next 2 years, like.
But I think those horror stories are from guys like Ryan Whitney, who are just like fluff on the fringe of the KHL instead of a head coach. Like the head coach's job. Sorry, Whitney. I guess I don't know.
That was just a wild way to describe it.
Yeah, no, yeah, fair enough. But him and Grant Shaw listening. I don't know. I think for McTavish, like he's probably going to get a cushy amount of Putin's money, and he'll go over there and try and bring some legitimacy to the Yaroslav locomotive.
You just gotta hope those rubles don't decrease in value.
He could become one of those guys like the Nigel Dawes type, who suddenly is like a Russian or a Kazakhstani citizen, and now all of a sudden like Mac T's suiting up for Team Russia in the Olympics. Not even as a coach, but Mac T's out there in 2022, wherever the hell the Olympics are going to be the next time, not wearing a lid, just like 60 years old, silver fox.
I'd say it'd probably be like maybe one of the periphery countries, not Russia. Like I can see, playing for Uzbekistan, something like that. Maybe Kazakhstan. Well, what I mean? Like I feel like Mac T can still contribute there. Like maybe if Mac T had gone to do a player coach type scenario with the Manchester Monarchs over in England, they wouldn't have folded last week. Maybe.
It was in New Hampshire.
Sorry?
Manchester's New Hampshire.
Was it not in England?
No.
That's
shit!
the
I was
American
like,
Hockey League team.
That made way more sense to me that it was closing in England. I'm like, why would English people care about hockey?
Yeah, no,
God damn.
That was the ECHL affiliate of the LA Kings.
Also going to slide in here with a little bit more fact checking. You guys are saying expectations are low in Yaroslavl. Last year, conference semifinals, came fourth in the KHL. The year before that, fifth. They lost in the conference semifinals. Year before that, they lost in the conference finals. Year before that, they came lost in the conference quarterfinals. We're second in the regular season.
So now we have Tyler here, so we can't just say a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
So you've caught us every episode until this point of us just been bullshitting.
Tyler's he's been on the podcast for like 10 minutes and he's laid into Chris. He just carved Dan. Buddy, if you correct me, I'm going to push you over. You better be careful.
But the other thing with the KHL too is that, we just saw it today, because the teams are starting to trade for the rights of any current NHL players, because they're gearing up for a lockout coming up.
That's the season after this upcoming.
So maybe
2021.
Maybe you see a McTavish trying to lure over some Oilers.
Back to the best Mac T moments. Talking to Brian Burke is like trying to sip water from a fire hose. I've always liked that one.
You said that?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Mocking reporters who promote NHL fighting. The further I get away from the ice level, the more brave I become. There's Mark Majot chimed in with, after Pisani in Game 5, won it in overtime, held up 7 fingers to the fans behind the Oilers bench, signifying they were coming back. I like that pull from Majot. This one I'm a big fan of. David Villy chimed in with, and of course this is allegedly in David's opinion, when he scooped up my girlfriend on the dance floor at Barry T's.
Wow.
She went stage 5 clinger on him, and it saved me a world of hurt. Again, allegedly, in David's opinion, that happened. Jackie B says, out coaching several high-ranking teams, getting the Oilers 1 goal away from winning the Stanley Cup in 2006. There's just a whole bunch, and there's like a bunch of people who said he was super kind when he would stop and take pictures with people. There's a lot of that. He was always kind and had a couple of minutes for everybody. Dan, you had an interesting experience with Mac T when you went over to, was that Germany?
To Cologne, yep. Yeah, when I was in Cologne, we were at the big cathedral there that is quite famous. It's a neat look up if you have a chance. But the players were actually staying at a hotel just across the street, and we went into a coffee shop, and McTavish was just standing there. So I shook his hand and said hello, and then we went and sat outside, and then McTavish went and sat at a table like right next to us, but just kind of like on his own. So we invited him to come sit with us, and he did. And he had 2 coffees with us, and we had a good chat. And there was Oiler fans all around that just kind of crowded in, and they wanted to have a minute to talk to him. And he gave everybody the time of day, and he was open to talking about everything, even though he knew I worked for Oilers Nation, which was neat. But he's just I mean, like at the end of the day, I think anybody that says that they hate the old boys club, which I'm a part of too, being around the team, I think at the end of the day, these guys are just good people to be in person with, just maybe not running your team.
I'm a big fan of Earl's feedback when he grabbed and pulled the tongue out of Ralph the dog. Big fan of Ralph the dog.
Yeah. Was there a dog that he ripped a tongue out of on the street named Ralph?
Ralph.
Tyler, can you fact check that, please? Ralph the dog is a Muppet. A Muppet character. Spelled ROWLF. Rolf the dog. A Muppet. A scruffy brown dog of and an indeterminate breed, though part Corgi, with a rounded black nose, long floppy ears. He was created and originally performed by Jim Henson. Ralph is the Muppet Theater's resident pianist, as well as one of the show's main cast members.
I remember him.
Mac T ripped out the tongue of Ralph the dog.
So what we're learning here is Mac T allegedly is not a big fan of the Muppets. And this Mac T conversation is always brought to you from our friends at Sherwood Ford. Again, follow them on Twitter at Sherwood Ford, on Instagram at Sherwood Ford _the Giant. Check out all those beautiful whips that you should head out to Sherwood Park, Alberta to take a test drive in. Get on out there.
Talk to Grant Shaw, former Edmonton Eskimo kicker.
Yeah, Grant will help you.
Still
out.
alive.
Why not? Grant will help you get into any vehicle that you would like to get into. Sticking along the lines of coaching, the Edmonton Oilers are still looking for their next head coach. Ken Holland said that he kind of wanted to get it sorted out relatively quickly before the end of May, I believe. Tyler will fact check me on that and tell me I'm wrong again. Who do you guys think? Like, obviously the front runner right now, I think whose job it is to lose based on some of the insider stuff that's gone out this week is Dave Tippett. There was one, I don't remember who it was. One of the big names said it was either Buffalo or Edmonton for Dave Tippett. And
Friedman said that.
Was it Friedman?
Mm-hmm.
And then Buffalo just went and hired Ralph Kruger this past week.
So Ralph.
What do you guys think? Who is your coaching front runner? I don't really know. I'm not going to pretend that I have a valid opinion on it. Dave Tippett would be funny to see Connor McDavid's team play the Trap. Everybody loves the Trap. Everybody loves watching it. Although he is kind of known, I think, as a player's coach from what I've read about him. There's also Todd Nelson. There's Glenn Gullitson's in the mix. What do you guys think, Dan?
I still hope it's going to be. I hold out a lot of hope that after his interview that Todd Nelson is in the top 2.
Do you think he's going to get an interview, or do you think they're just giving it to Tippett?
I think they should give him an interview. I can't imagine that Holland, having had him as as his guy in Grand Rapids, that he wouldn't give him a chance. But I just I have a soft spot for Todd Nelson. I think he gives you the players element, but also he has some good coaching style.
The thing I'll say about him being a coach his thing was the Trap, right? And those low-scoring defensive games in Arizona, Phoenix, whatever you want to call it.
You mean Dave Tippett?
Yeah, Dave Tippett. The thing with Tippett, he gets that reputation, but was he doing that because that's what he believed was the best chance to win? Or was he doing that because that was the way to do it with a team that wasn't very good in Arizona? Like, you had Shane Doan, who, 50, 55 point guy, but that's who was leading your team with Oliver Ekman-Larsson. He knew he had a good goalie. He knew he had an okay defense, so he just kind of played to that strength. I'd be interested if he comes here, does he find a way to kind of crank it up a bit? And Rick's nodding in agreement with me.
Yeah, that's one thing. He never really had the offensive talent wherever he's been that he's going to have when he gets here. So we really don't know what his actual philosophy is. You know what he's done with what he's had. So I want to know. I'd love to hear his interview and just go, you know what, this is what I'm going to do with this type of an offense. Because I think what we're at right now is we need someone who's a little more progressive, who doesn't really do the old school game, who kind of, brings in the speed and all that new stuff right now. And I think the biggest thing against him is everybody knows what he's done before, and he hasn't utilized that, but it's because he didn't have it. So at the end of the day, I just want someone who's going to be progressive, who plays the new game, who's out there all about speed and skill. And I, like Bagnelk said, I really don't know who it's going to be, but those are the things I want to see covered, as opposed to, this guy who wants to, we got to watch out for our own end right now. Well, if we play the puck in the other end of the ice, we're not too worried about our own right now.
If you look back so before Dave Tippett was the coach of the Coyotes, he had coached the Dallas Stars after Ken Hitchcock's tenure. And it's kind of an interesting thing to look at is in his first season, they finished top 5 in the league in goals. After that, they were 20th in the league, and then they were top 10 again, and then back down lower. So they kind of flipped back and forth. But in each of those seasons that he was there in Dallas, he had kind of a veteran squad with some talent, and it seemed they were successful in different ways, which I think is interesting. There's one year where, Mike Modano puts up 90 points and they're a top offensive club. And then there's the next year where they're a low offensive club, but they still carve their way into the playoffs playing a checking game. And I think that kind of points to a coach that has some level of versatility. And if you look back again at his Coyotes days, he took a really, really mediocre team to the conference finals. I think it was, in 2012? With their best player was Radim Verbata, Ray Whitney at the age of 47. His pedigree is pretty good.
Yeah,
Ray Whitney is alive. Chris, go ahead.
Noted. It took some hesitation and thinking on my part, but I'm fully on board with Dave Tippett at this point. He didn't have the greatest finish in Arizona, but his tenure overall, he's a very good record as a coach, and I'm surprised he hasn't been hired already. I'm curious to see what comes out over the next few days. What interviews are being taken place. I'm surprised. I fully expect Tippett to get hired.
Dusty Nielsen wrote at OilersNation.com a little while ago, about 10 days ago, about some potential options, and I'm wondering if any of these tickle your fancy as well. So leading the list was Dave Tippett. Next up was Dan Bylsma, Todd Nelson, Chris Knobloch, who was Connor's junior coach in Erie, Glenn Gulletson, who's an assistant coach right now, or Jay Woodcroft getting the bump up from Bakersfield. Do any of those coaches inspire you heading into next year?
I think to me it's a foregone conclusion right now that Tippett's the front runner, but I think that any one of those names could come up if the interview goes well. But I think where you're going to see Chris Knobloch's name come up is probably with Bakersfield after we lose Woodcroft to LA.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I don't think you bump him up right now. There are all sorts of rumors of him going over LA, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. You might as well put in a couple of years in the AHL as a successful head coach and then get your jump up as another head coach in the NHL, as opposed to just going back to being an assistant coach on a team that may not be very good for the next little while. I mean, they're in some issues. They're a little bit older right now. I don't see them really bouncing back into a massive playoff contender next year, so I don't really see the benefit in his long-term career there. Todd Nelson, I think, has the heartstrings of everybody here because of his time here and his time down, the AHL when he was a part of the organization. But I think Tippett might be the safe play, and when you've got a team like this, and we've got a couple of years that we're growing so well, you might want to take the safer choice here. Go with a Tippett, go with Holland, and then Tippett, if you want to move out in a couple of years, you've got Woodcroft coming up underneath him. Gulletson, he was out there in Calgary before, so he's got a little more to learn to add to his resume. I'm going all in on Tippett right now too.
I think I'm all in on. I know I just talked highly of Tippett, and I agree with Rick. It is the safe choice, but I think the Oilers. I've fallen in love with the idea of the Chris Knobloch thing just because he was McDavid's coach in Erie, and I mean, obviously Connor McDavid's like such a exceptional talent, but still I think there's something to be said for how well McDavid was coached in the OHL, and Knobloch has that background. He won a WHL championship with Kootenay. He won the WHL championship in Erie, and he's got a lot of experience pounding out like a lot of good young players from those systems.
I see a lot of connections between Knobloch and Edmonton, but other than the fact that he was the head coach of Connor way back when, would he still be in contention then? Like, I don't think we don't need to bring a coach in who's like buddy with Connor or whatever. I think you need a coach in to come in, you know, put this whole team together. So I don't see how Knobloch gets above a Tippett, a Nelson, even a Gulletson for that matter, off top, just because he had connections with Connor in juniors.
I think it's more, when it comes to Knobloch, I think it's more that it's just communicating with the young players right now, and that's a nightmare of an issue that we've had kind of bubbling underneath the surface, is that we have all these old school guys like Ken Hitchcock and Todd McClellan that just they seem to lose the kids. You can't yell at the kids anymore because their fragile egos will break into 1,000 pieces, and you can't bag skate anybody because good lord, they can't break a sweat anymore. I don't know, and so I think with the Knobloch angle, it's just that you're getting somebody that can talk millennial speak.
Change their diapers, communicate with them in emoji, that kind of thing.
I can see a guy like Chris Knobloch coming in as an assistant coach, depending on who gets the head coaching job. I mean, it would make sense if he wants to leave where he's currently at. I don't know.
He's been let go by the Flyers. So
Man, where were you on that one, Tyler?
Free agent.
Come on.
I just fact
No one
checked
give him
before
a mic.
Yaremchuk did.
I think having a player-friendly coach in Edmonton would do us a lot of good. Just like we talk about culture so much, and if there's like dressing room tension, nothing will fix that better than having a player-friendly coach.
But also we have Manny Viveros, who coached the Swift Current Broncos 2 years ago before coming to us.
At the end of the day,
Gulletson as well.
it is 100% on fixing the roster. And then, you know, a head coach at that point doesn't really matter, because you could have the greatest head coach with the second greatest head coach on the bench last year, and this team wasn't going to be much different. So if you don't fix the roster first, your coach really doesn't matter at that point.
I mean, a guy like Nuge is what? He's going into his 9th season with 8 coaches or something ridiculous like that. Rick's 100% right. You have to fix the roster. You can't have 3 guys that score. You can't. It just doesn't work that way. So we'll see. We'll see. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks as we lead up to the draft and try to figure out who is going to be the Oilers' 6,000th coach since 2010. A couple of the boys here at the table have written about the defensive logjam that the Oilers could be facing in maybe this year, maybe next year, maybe the year after that, depending on how guys progress. You've got a prospect like Samorukov, who's ripping it up with Guelph right now. Evan Bouchard had an excellent playoff run with the Condors. You've got Caleb Jones. You've got Ethan Baird that are kind of bubbling under, maybe ready for prime time. Looking at the Oilers' defense, Cam, I'll start with you. Who needs to go? How do they fix this logjam? Who's moving up? Who's moving down? What do you think?
Well, maybe the Oilers, I know a lot of the commenters are really excited about the idea of trading Leon Draisaitl for Seth Jones to further. I know Rick loves that. He busted up into the office and he kicked the door down. He says, "I have not slept since you suggested that trade. I want to happen so badly." But no, jokes aside, the Oilers are... The blue line's just like ridiculously backloaded right now. You have on the left side, there's already Clefbaum, and there's already Nurse, and there's already Sakura, and there's already Chris Russell, and then beneath that you have prospects that, like Caleb Jones, I don't really know how much more time in the AHL that guy needs. William Lagesson's right behind him, and then like you mentioned, you've got Samorukov as well coming up. Where's that guy going to play? I mean, you have like 7 lefties right there. There isn't that much space for all of them. The Oilers need to start opening up some space on their blue line so their prospects can develop and come up. I suggested...
Who's your safe bet?
My safe bet?
Yeah.
To stay? To go? I think they'll actively try to move one of Sakura and Russell. I think Sakura is the easier 1-2 move because despite the fact he has a larger cap hit, he is significantly better player, and he came back from his injury last year and looked quite good. I would rather keep him and move Russell. I don't know if moving Russell's a thing they can do, but in my opinion, I think the play to make is to sell high on Nurse's breakout offensive season, because the reality is if he puts up another 40-point year next year, we're looking at like Essa Lindell, who is thoroughly mediocre, got paid what, 6.3 million in Dallas? 5.8. There we go. Tyler corrected me there. So
fact checking.
So yeah, I mean, like Lindell is like a 20-30 point D-man. He's okay, and he got paid big money. And I think Nurse puts up another season like that, he gets paid like 6.5 annually. So why not look to move him for like a William Nylander type, something like that. Like a team like Toronto needs a blue liner. Kyle Dubas is familiar with Nurse. He had him in Sault Ste. Marie. Go and acquire that really good, skilled, speedy winger to play alongside McDavid, and there you go. You have your fourth forward who can put the puck in the net.
I bet
or
you.
playing with Connor or Nuge, like either way, it'd be very nice. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you on some of the things, but I think Chris Russell's going to be easier to move than you think.
Looking at Chris Russell's contract on puckpedia.com, he gets paid, his cap hit is $4 million. His base salary this year is $4 million, but then it swan dives to 1.5 in 2020, 2021.
So I think there are certain teams who will look at that and enjoy it. I just think you'll find an old school GM somewhere. Like Vancouver was able to move Eric Goodbranson. Now, granted, they had to take back Tanner Pearson, but if Eric Goodbranson can get traded, Chris Russell can get traded. You know, there's still a handful of GMs out there who are going to overvalue the shot blocking, who are going to overvalue all the intangibles that Cowboy Chris brings. I think he'll be easy to move, and I think he will get moved. The Oilers had him playing on his offside this past season. And I think that could almost, as weird as this sounds, boost his trade value a bit, in the sense that when they're dangling him out there, they can go to other teams and say, hey, he's proven on the left side, he's proven on the right side, he'll handle wherever you really want to put him. So I think moving Chris Russell makes a little bit of sense. If I can throw out a trade proposal that I put in my last piece today on the site, what if they could find someone for to give you a third or a fourth round pick for Chris Russell? Dream scenario. Let's say it's a fourth, though. A fourth round pick for Russell. You take the fourth and Ethan Bear, and you swap it for Colin Miller out in Vegas.
You're getting creative. I like this. You're thinking things through.
Try to just get any single asset for Russell and then package it up. It sounds weird, but Ethan Bear is almost useless to this organization now. When you look at that right side and the fact that Matt Benning, Evan Bouchard, and Joel Persson are all ahead of him on that depth chart, I think Ethan Bear might be a guy that's not that safe. And on the left side, you have Clefbaum, Nurse, Sakura, Caleb Jones, Dmitry Samarukov. There's a part of me that thinks Caleb Jones might not be too safe either. I know that they really like him and what he brought in his few NHL games this year, but if you have Samarukov coming up and you think he's 1 year in the AHL away from being a full-time NHL defenseman, and say you want to keep Clefbaum, Nurse, and Sakura this year, well, then maybe you just slide out Jones, trade him while he maybe has the value of a B-level prospect, and you get a good young forward for him, and Samarukov can be that next guy coming up on the left side.
Would you rather do that or try and, in the same scenario, move Sakura at 2 and then have Jones as your number 3? Because I think he's going to be just fine with the amount of minutes he gets, and if you can structure your top 4 properly, they can play more minutes and then really secure that bottom third a little bit better than what we've done in the previous years. I can still see something where Russell hopefully is gone. And if you could move, I don't want to move Sakura, but
think of the cap
$5.5 million
space
on the cap space, man. If you could somehow move that.
It's a lot of money,
huge.
but he is a solid player, right? Like if there was anybody on this team right now, you'd want your Bouchard. That's actually that's the one that I really think makes a lot of sense. Is you'd love to have Evan Bouchard playing on a pairing when he comes up in the league with Sakura. I think he's such a steadying player.
To further the point, how good did Sexy Reg look when he came back?
And he's killing it in the championships.
A lot of us thought he wasn't going to play well, may not even play at all last year. And when he came back and he was making breakout passes that other guys couldn't do. He was doing a lot of things that other defensemen on this team can't do. And you're just looking at it like, man, if only they had Sexy Reg all year, then maybe things would have been different. I think at the end of the day, the logjam on the back end needs to get cleared out. It needs a fresh look, a fresh breath of air, kind of like what you'd get from our friends at POG. What I need you to do is I need you to head over to thepogstore.com. Check out the unit that fits your life, whether it's a mobile unit for your car, something inside your fridge, or the plug-in wall unit that you're going to put in your garage where you hang your hockey equipment. Whatever you need, Pog is there to freshen your household, freshen your life. It kills 98% of household odors caused by bacteria and fungus, freshens and purifies the air naturally using the power of ozone, and it eliminates odors without the use of dangerous chemicals. Head on over to thepogstore.com and try their 30-day challenge. Do it!
Let me hit you with a Pog fresh idea.
Go
What
ahead.
if they were to move on from Russell? Are you confident enough in Sakura's ability to play the offside and put him with Jones on a third pairing? I think that's something that could be looked at.
So on Twitter right now, there's a thread by Wheaton Oil, and he breaks down moving Nurse from the left to the right and putting Nurse with Clefbaum and Sakura and Larson together. The things he really talks about are the negatives from moving from your positive wing to your off wing. It really takes away from your exit passes, but because Nurse carries it out so often, that's really a little bit more minimal. Just reading that whole thread, which I highly suggest everyone goes to read, I'm fully on board with what he was saying, and you roll with Clefbaum, Nurse as your first, and then Sakura, Larson as your two, and then your third really could be, I would like to see Jones there, and I think you put Benning there, and if you do have one of these younger Swedes that are pushing their way up, you can have them try and do 6 and 7 with Benning. If Benning was your 7th, like I know he gets paid a little bit more than you like him to, but if Benning was your 7th and you were running a Pearson or Lagesson or whoever on the right side to go along with Jones, I think you're okay with that.
Thoughts, prayers, dreams, aspirations?
All of those. Yeah, I agree with Rick 100%. To your point, Tyler, I'd much rather see Nurse flip over instead of Sakura, just for the sake that Nurse's stats, like skating the puck out of the zone instead of passing it. You never really want to see anybody, like Wheaton Oil goes through the pros and cons of just switching sides in general, and you don't really want to see anybody, but if it had to be a guy, I would like to see Nurse give it a try, and then you could have even Russell playing on his right side too.
Sticking along the trade/rumors, TSN over at tsn.ca, Frank Saravalli this morning released the TSN trade board, which at number 15, actually, you know what? I'll just run through it real quick. Number 1 on the list is Phil Kessel. 2, Jacob Trouba. 3, Ryan Callahan. 4, Jason Zucker. 5, PK Subban. 6, Michael Frolik in Calgary. 7, Connor Brown. Kyle Turris in Nashville. I didn't realize Kyle Turris made $6 million. Interesting. Yeah. He had 55 points last year, in case you're wondering. Kevin Shattenkirk from New York. Artemi Panarin in Columbus. I guess you're going to trade for his rights, maybe?
Or a sign and trade.
I think we all kind of. I think it's already a
interesting.
foregone conclusion that dude and Bobrovsky was signing in Florida. I thought.
I wish the NHL, like to Dan's point, I wish the NHL did more sign and trades.
Oh, sign and trades are a good time.
Sign and trades are a good time. You know what I mean? That's why I like about the NBA. Travis Hamonic in Calgary, Nikita Zaitsev in Toronto, Oli Mata in Pittsburgh, Colin Miller in Vegas, and rounding out the top 15, one Milan Lucic with 4 years left on his deal at $6 million per. Now, last summer, we got many complaints on the website about how often we wrote about Milan Lucic trade rumors. We were talking about potential moves to anywhere. This week on Cam was reading it, listening to it. What was on 31 Thoughts this morning, that Friedman was saying they got offers but wanted too much. How did that go?
Well, there was talk earlier in the week that came out in which Friedman suggested before the Ken Holland hire, the Oilers front office, I don't know who it would have been, Keith, Gretzky, the Brain Trust, Nicholson, whatever, were mulling over the idea of a possible Lucic buyout, despite the fact that, you know, it's a difficult contract to buy out. But now there's been talk, it was Friedman again saying the Oilers were trying to make a trade, but rather than just a pure dump, they're viewing him as somebody that has value and that they could actually get something back. Which, I mean, if you're eating half the contract and a team's acquiring a $3 million a year Lucic, then yeah, maybe there's some value there. But I don't. If you're purely dumping that $6 million, then I don't know if there's anything coming back other than another bad contract.
Are you suggesting that there wouldn't be many teams out there looking to acquire a $6 million man that had 6 goals, 14 assists for 20 points last year.
No, I don't think many teams have a burning appetite for that. And the other difficulty too is in the past we had, you had your Arizonas and teams like that were all trying really hard to reach the cap floor and struggling to do so. But I think this coming season, you only really have one. Ottawa is the only team that's in that situation where they're going to eat shit contracts to get to the floor. There aren't that many places that are going to be down to take on a bad contract.
Well, and ultimately Milan Lucic controls where he goes because he's got a bulletproof deal where he's got a full no move. So even if Ottawa did come calling, he could just be like, no, I don't want to go to Ottawa.
And the thing with teams wanting to get to the cap floor is they can do that going year by year and taking bad contracts that have a year left. You don't go take Milan Lucic to get $6 million. You go take Ryan Callahan from Tampa Bay. And people are always like, oh, well, look at Arizona. They took Pronger's deal and Datsuk's deal. Those were dead money contracts. They basically had no salary attached to them. They just bought the cap hits from those respective teams. It was Philly and Detroit. Lucic is money and cap hit, and that scares off a lot of small market teams.
So looking at Lucic's contract this year, as we know, his cap hit is it's $6 million. The total salary this year is $6 million. Next year's salary is $4 million. And then $5 and then $4 million to round it out. So it's not like you're not getting big savings like Tyler just said. You're paying the guy just kind of what he.
I'd also like to add to any general managers that are listening to this right now. Not only with Lucic's 6 goals and $6 million contract you get for trading him, you also get he has very entertaining interviews. He's very emotional. He has 2 very cute daughters. That he always fist bumps before the game, so that provides good entertainment.
You're selling them hard here.
I want to keep
about the
following.
hits?
There was one more thing, but I can't remember.
going.
That's
What
all.
about the hits?
That's all I got.
All
Oh,
the
he
hits?
he throws hits.
He's got plenty of hits.
Plenty hits.
Top 10 in the league, I've heard.
He gets off his changes are quick. Like you never find him stuck at the bench. Like he's in and out quick. And he's
Shot
good.
at Gabriel Landeskog there.
And he's a good dressing room guy. So think
Dan,
about
you
it.
got any sells? Let's follow this for a minute. What are your sells on Milan Lucic? He had 2 fights on hockeyfights.com.
He did?
Like, I looked at that, so he's not a big fighter anymore.
He's not a big fighter. Well, he
he
can be if he needs to be.
Sure. Nuclear deterrent, if you will.
If somebody punches him in the face first, he'll probably punch them back,
Mm-hmm.
which is usually the way now in hockey fights world.
I liked when he dummied. I don't remember. They were playing Tampa, I think, when he dummied that guy in the corner and kind of like shook him
Matthew
up.
Joseph.
I like when he does. I like when he shakes guys. Just really scares them like a dad would,
Yeah. He speaks highly of other cities, so
he loves Vancouver.
yeah, he gives a lot of love to other cities, which is good. He doesn't like dry, arid climates.
No,
So
he needs
there's-
lotion on the skin. Again, this is good. Throwing back to earlier episodes of Oilersnation Radio, I offered to lube him up.
Yep.
If he's feeling dry, let me know.
But there's got to be some moist cities that he can go to.
A nice humid climate,
Maybe if there's a team in Hawaii.
perhaps.
I hear that he likes to pick up the appetizer bill when the boys go out for a meal.
Oh, quick appies. Milan's like, hey boys, I got it.
Yep.
You wanted the bandana pizza bread?
There's no way that you can have this fact checked by Yaremchuk.
Tyler,
Yeah. Good luck with that
confirmation,
one.
please.
Tyler scouring the internet. He cannot prove or disprove that Milan
He's looking at
Lucic-
Milan Lucic's tax records to see if he's writing off the appetizers from the Cactus Club Cafe.
Oh, well, lettuce wraps with the boys.
Yeah.
That's nice. Everybody enjoys that.
You should have gone to the brew house.
Cam, if you're selling Milan Lucic, what is your selling point?
You won a gold draft because of him?
It's true.
Yeah.
We're going to get to that because we need to discuss jerseys.
If you trade for Milan Lucic, you can also acquire me, and I will pick the games that he scores because I know best.
That is true. Of all the people, Cam ran away with it with a 4-1 win.
I am the
Milan Lucic
I am the
gold draft.
Milan Whisperer.
He is.
The next goal draft, Cam should have like double the amount of games than everybody else, so he can Lucic can score more.
We need it. Cam, we need you.
Sure.
This next season is all on you, really. Is what
It
we're
always
saying.
is.
So if Milan is still here come September, October, and he doesn't score more than 6 goals, I know where I'm going to be pointing the blame.
You know what? I think even if he isn't here, we should still do it because he's a hard-hitting guy that we paid money to.
I think
hard-hitting, exactly.
even if that guy gets dealt or bought out or retires or something, I think there's going to be Milan Lucic content for a long time. I think this guy's going to be a point of conversation for the next 5-10 years, no matter what.
What do you mean? Like, what are you thinking?
Say he gets traded to Vancouver. Whenever he does or says anything, Oilers fans are going to dissect the fuck out of it.
Sure.
Because we're going to
It's
look...
also an interesting warning, too, about dipping too heavily into free agency for big
Which,
games.
that entire...
no
'Cause
team has ever heated.
That
ever.
year, it was
yeah.
Lucic, Okposo,
Ladd.
David Backes, Ladd.
Franz Nielsen.
There's not, and like which one of those guys has been a high performer? Because they all got big money.
None. They're all bad contracts. Like the best one handed out that day was Franz Nielsen, who's effectively a hybrid second line center who puts up like 40 points a year for $5.5 million.
Yeah.
And then Ladd's contract's a disaster. Backus kind of carved out a role, but he's Lucic-esque. Lucic is obviously a disaster. Louis Eriksson, Canucks fans couldn't they would drive that guy to the airport and pay for an upgrade for him to sit
More legroom.
in business class.
Oh, I was just gonna go emergency exit rows.
Oh, I would love
those.
those.
Listen,
I would prefer the emergency exit row to the first class.
we're on a budget here, but you need legroom. Emergency exit row. Let's work it out. I think what Cam's saying is that sometimes free agency contracts really stink, and it's a problem. It's a problem that can be solved by our friends at Pog. As I mentioned earlier, if you head over to thepogstore.com, they have got a unit that fits your life, whether that's in your fridge, your car, your house, your bedroom, your living room, your bathroom, in your gym bag, whatever you need. Pog has a unit for you. Head on over to thepogstore.com and pick something up that will kill 98% of household odors caused by bacteria and fungus and eliminate all of those odors without the dangerous use of chemicals. Check out their 30-day challenge today. Gentlemen, I want to turn to the playoffs. Last night, Basting just moved forward to the Cup Finals after sweeping the Carolina Hurricanes. My friend Rick behind me was very excited about that. Very excited about that. Chris, I think that was you that put up the Hurricanes picture on Nation's Twitter?
Yeah.
Or social?
Yeah.
Oilers fans, don't forget, man. Although there was some that did.
I did it more for Rick. Personally, I'm not butthurt about that still. But I understand. I understand the pain.
Most of my angst is still directed towards
4.
Bergeron, man.
You were like 4 years old when it happened.
No, we were 13.
We were 13.
We were.
Tyler
13.
was 4.
I was 9.
Tyler's 9.
Well, I was
God, I'm old.
37?
25. I was 25. I was on White Ave every night. That last party would have been epic.
Oh, man.
And the only reason we didn't have it is because of Rod Brindamore and whoever else was over there at the time.
Justin
And I
Wade.
guarantee you, half that crowd was very happy that I walked home sad that night. That I walked home and there might have been a little bit of fucking tear in my left eye, and left eye only. It was a really windy night. They were all very happy how upset I was. And I honestly, last night watching that, when it was the second goal that really got me. That was the one I really enjoyed. I was like, hey, you know what? Now it's over. That first goal, everyone, you still feel like you can come back. That second goal, I was like, okay, no, this is it. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to enjoy the last little bit of this. And if I could have had a camera that just panned through those stands the rest of the game, I would have been very happy to watch them go from very happy and then just watch them slowly turn sadder and sadder and sadder, and then have to pick up that towel they had behind them, use that for their tears, and walk their ass out of there before Holyfield could come out and punch somebody, before they brought out a fucking basketball hoop, they go dunk, before anybody go play duck hunt. They all went home. They went home sad, and I sat back and I had a great evening.
Hey, a key thing to remember, you were talking about how epic the party would have been on White that night when you were in your youth at 25, is when Big George LaRock was on the podcast with us. He talked about losing in 2006, and he said what bugged him the most about it is how Raleigh-Durham, Carolina, didn't deserve it, because then when they had their cup parade, the city was like, you guys have to keep it quiet and get this done in like an hour.
Oh, yeah.
And they did not give a flying fuck about partying and getting fired up.
I was more happy Carolina lost last night because they're an extremely boring team to watch. And that series was awful. I didn't watch much of it, but it was the lowest entertainment I've ever seen in the playoffs so far. And I'm so glad they're not in the finals.
So you didn't like my hand pass compilation that I put together?
That was fun.
Since the first round of the playoffs, it's all been downhill. And
Yeah.
it's
It's been
kind
the
of
worst.
it's kind of like that every year
It
in the
is.
NHL. Like the first round's banging and it's amazing, and then after that, it's okay. The second round's good. I always find the conference finals, I am like nowhere to be seen. I've watched like I think I watched 40 minutes of Game 1 of Carolina-Boston, and I watched the last overtime of St. Louis-San Jose. That's it. I'm not ashamed to admit it, because that happens in the NHL. There's no stars to market the game around. I know people are going to get mad at me for comparing it to the NBA, but you got Kawhi, Steph Curry, Giannis. You got all these big superstars. Not CJ McCollum, Dame Lillard.
Big country.
But you got all
Reeves.
these big stars to market it
Damon
around, and all these
Stoudemire.
really, really stacked
Vince
teams.
Carter.
We
Scottie
were talking
Pippen.
about that this morning. At first you're pumped that
Dennis
Carolina
Rodman.
At first you're Dan, let me talk here. At first you're pumped that Carolina made it to the second round.
Yeah.
It's like, well, not Carolina, but just any other team that's not get out of here. Like a new team that's going to win the cup. And then
get to your
now you're
point?
like just upset that it's not
At this
entertaining.
point, you wish there was a Tampa Bay, Washington, something like that still
Exactly,
kicking,
yeah.
so you could watch really, really good hockey teams instead of teams that get pucks deep and play the 3-2 or the 2-2-1 or whatever.
I disagree with that, though. I think that the fact that if the Bruins and the Sharks weren't included in this group of teams that have moved on, I think it would be more exciting. You've got the St. Louis Blues storyline there. You've got the
Dude, the Sharks have never won.
the
Blues have never won
Sherwood
either.
Thornton has never won. I know.
Sharks
I-
are a
never won
fraud.
either.
If you're just
Sharks are a
referring to this
fraud.
because we're Oiler fans, that's
Sharks
fine.
are frauds.
But outside of Oilerville, there's definitely a story about San Jose. But I agree. I don't know if anyone wants to watch more because Ovechkin's in it, or if you're going to hear, you know what? Oh well, it's just the same team's winning again. Like if Pittsburgh was in it, are people going to be more excited because Crosby's there,
Yeah.
or are you going to say, oh no, they've won it before, they always win it, blah blah blah, that type of stuff. There's always going to be something out there for you not to want to watch it or something like that. But I do enjoy a little bit of the Joe Thornton thing. I like Boston. I've never really had a big issue with them. They've done a lot of good things for me. They beat Vancouver in 11. They knocked out the Hurricanes this year. Can't hate them for that.
Fuck
St.
Marshall.
Louis, they've got a lot of connections to Edmonton, whether it be the city or the team. I kind of want to see St. Louis
Patty
finish
Maroon.
it off now. Patty
Maroon.
Maroon, David
David Perron.
Perron, Jay Bolmeister, Colton Parayko. A lot of guys out there. There's a lot of connections.
It's a fun team to follow. Like watching Patty Maroon score that OT winner take down Dallas. That was a sweet thing to see.
Oh.
Love to see that guy win the Stanley Cup.
100%. Could you imagine the emotion coming out of that guy
God.
when he lifts that cup?
Oh man.
Is he gonna have Anthony his arm, and then the cup,
In the other
His
arm?
kid's
Like
gonna be
it's-
carrying the cup.
right?
Around
Anthony
the
can
ice.
hold half of it,
That'd be sweet.
and then Pat's got the other part of it.
He's just gonna lift Anthony up like he's the
Like
Stanley
he's
Cup.
the cup. Oh,
Yeah, to me it's both teams out of the West I want to beat Boston. Either St. Louis or
I
San Jose.
really
I'll be
want to
happy.
see Joe Thornton beat Boston to win a Stanley Cup.
It'd be great.
That'd be cool.
I mean, who wouldn't want to see Joe win a Stanley Cup? You know what I mean?
Everyone likes that guy, right? Like who doesn't like Joe Thornton?
Yeah.
You think he retires if he wins?
To me, like, we were talking about this upstairs because to me, you have to go out on a high like a Ray Bork style. It's
Yeah.
dope. He's had a hell of a career. Cap it off with the Stanley Cup. Man, it doesn't get better than that.
But the call of the Leafs is there. He can go play with the Leafs next year now
I
as
don't
a
think
Stanley
I
Cup
don't think
champion.
I don't know if there's money to make that happen.
$1 million to be a
That's
centerman.
possible.
What's Cam? Speaking of the Leafs, what's going on with Mitch Marner lately? There was infighting amongst Leafs fans on Twitter.
There's a huge divide among Leafs fans. There's the more analytically inclined think Nylander's the superior player, and there's the more old school fans. They like the good Toronto boy and Mitch Marner. A lot of the more Nylanderish group are suggesting, okay, trade Marner now, get a bunch of like picks and assets and shit, and throw money at like Erik Karlsson. And then other people are like, Nylander's a bitch and disappeared in the playoffs. Like, get rid of that guy for literally nothing and give Mitch Marner infinite money. Those are kind of like the two camps.
Selling Nylander right now would be like the Oilers.
It's quite selling low.
Please,
yes.
please sell Nylander now. Maybe
Would you
Cross.
guys pull the trigger on Nurse for Nylander?
I would.
I would too.
I
Matt
would.
Benning for Nylander.
Nylander's a really good player.
Nylander's a good player, and he's locked in for a long time. The reason I say yes to this, I like Darnell Nurse.
Me too.
I'm the one that came up with the Daryl nickname. But his next contract's going to be expensive.
Are you worried about the money on that trade though? If 6.9 and you're dealing out Nurse who's 3 point. I know Nurse is going to sign for it, but you got to think of this next coming season. If you're going to do that deal, you need to find a way to subtract more money somewhere, and it'll be real tight to upgrade your blue line if you're sacrificing Darnell Nurse, adding another expensive option up front, and then not bringing in another defenseman at some sort of salary range, because
What-
you're strapped for cash if you do that trade.
You're 100% right, but what would you do to kind of add another top six winger? you're going to have to either give up some value or you're going to have to clear space to sign somebody.
I think the buy low side of things is right, which is what it would be on William Nylander. But I mean, what if it's JT Miller instead, who costs you $2 million less than William Nylander? He might only cost you a second-round pick instead of Darnell Nurse, something along those lines. I think you might be able to shop more around the edges of the market and still find a guy. Like, the Oilers don't need a top-line winger. They need someone to throw with Nuge, right? Because then you can go McDavid, Draisaitl, then you can have someone who's reliable, a consistent. You don't need a consistent 35 goal scorer. You need a consistent 20 goal scorer to put with Nugent Hopkins, and bang, there's your second scoring line. Maybe you go get Connor Brown too from the Leafs. But if I'm looking at the Leafs, maybe it's not Nylander, maybe it's Andreas Janssen or Kasperi Kapanen that shakes free from there. And maybe those are names, they wouldn't cost you Darnell Nurse. They're more friendly towards your salary cap, and I think they would be also on the block.
Yeah, I like Kapanen just as much as like Nylander, except for the fact he's going to be cheaper dollars and acquisition. A lot of guys, we got to find like a Lee Stepniak type of player that gets signed in early August that puts up that 18 to 23, 24 type of goals. And then if you just win one trade, look what we did with Pat Maroon. Look what we did with Pat Maroon. That was a nothing
big
trade.
ask,
We have a low bar.
That is a big ask.
All you got to do is win one trade, man. And even Chiarelli won that trade. So Holland should be able to do this no problem. They paid half his contract and shipped him over here.
I think
you make one good deal and then you find a fringe player that you can sign in August, or you can move like a second or third round pick for, and you've got that taken care of. And the Nurse thing, I think you need to hold on for a little bit longer just to solidify your D.
I don't know. Like we talk so extensively about how good the guys are that are coming up. If you can move out Russell's money and sell high, I really think the Nurse for Nylander would be a big win. You put Nugent Hopkins and Nylander and then Draisaitl and McDavid together, and you have two very good pairs. And I think the Oilers are pretty much set for forwards. You can plug in your Ty Ratties and your Pontus Abergs on those lines, and you're good. But you really need that fourth good forward. I think. Like the Stempniak thing, like the Oilers had that in Chiazon this year. Basically, they need to give Nugent Hopkins his elite player, because Nuge right now has to carry around all these boat anchors all the time, and I think we've all accepted that the Draisaitl McDavid is the top duo. Those guys are going to be playing together. Now Nuge needs his good winger, and then you're pretty much set there for forwards. I think.
Yeah, I mean, like, Cam's right. Look at the wingers that Nuge played with all year. It's a mixed bag of who the fucks and what's going on. I don't know that that's a good idea to go into the next season with that. I'm curious what Holland's going to do, because he is the guy who got out from under the Pavel Datsyuk contract. He's the one that moved it. You know, he's cleared cap space before. We'll see what he can do. Who knows? Earlier in the podcast, Tyler tweeted out from ON Radio Podcast, talking about Dave Tippett as a potential head coach for the Edmonton Oilers. And I just wanted to check in on the feedback from a couple of people. Our friend Fat Dad, friend of the show, says, only Dave Tippett with a mustache. Dave Tippett without a mustache can fuck right off. That's Fat Dad.
Thank you, Fat Dad.
With the analysis. Oilcaholic says, it's got to be Camaro Todd. Think of the ON shirts, boys. Sound like he's thinking of the bottom line of the company. SR Morocco says he made Arizona the most excruciatingly boring team in the league to watch, and he missed the playoffs the last 5 seasons he was there. What's not to love about that? Mike DeKalb says, I disagree. Defense first coach who only seems to stifle creativity, was also notorious in Arizona for playing gritty veterans over young prospects. He'll be Hitchcock 2.0. Anthony Flynn says, is Dallas Eakins not available? Bruce B says Todd Nelson returns. Matt the Framer says, why do people want Tippett? What about his coaching career has said he is a winner? Even in Dallas with a pretty good team, he had very little playoff success. Pass.
Doesn't he have a Jack Adams?
He might.
I think he does.
That's just a most improved team award.
Yeah.
Matt the Framer comes in and says, well, he is old and from the prairie, so I guess he must be good.
So we were all kind of sold on him, but it seems like the nation followers are maybe not on the same page as us.
Here's how I read that, though. We've got our guards up. 12 of 13 years out of the playoffs will do that. So everybody's kind of like poking around corners and trying to hide behind shields and stuff. I don't know. It's the same thing with Holland. Like, you can look at his work in Detroit at the end of his tenure there and be like, oh, shit.
It was the same thing with Hitchcock. It was the same thing with McClellan. It was the same thing with Nelson. It was the same thing with Kruger. Like, it's just, when you go down the list, nobody has said, like, I think through the whole decade of darkness plus no coach has been like the answer, but no coach has ever been the real problem either. So I think people are just jaded, and it's gonna be a lot of criticism, and they're gonna hear him talk for the first time, and we'll love him, and then you see how he does on the ice.
You could put Scotty Bowman in his prime behind the bench for the Oilers, and with the team they have, it's just, what are you gonna do? You can't build a house. I've said this a million times, with 3 nails and a handful of jelly beans. It doesn't work.
After Googling pictures of Dave Tippett's mustache, though, I'm even more on board with Tippett, as long as he brings it back.
Fat Dad? Maybe Fat Dad's onto something.
He's onto something.
I want to wrap up episode 37 of Oilersnation Radio, but I want to end it off on the Lucic gold draft that I mentioned earlier. Cam, we need to get our jerseys, my friend. We need to fulfill this bet. So what we need to do for next week is we'll have the pictures, what we're getting. We'll put in the orders. Next week we'll take care of this and get the Lucic gold draft bet settled. Cam won. What can you do?
I'm a winner.
What jerseys are we getting again?
We're getting lame ass ones.
You're getting ones that say Coom Fan 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you're gonna wear them together while I'm there.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice.
It's a nice thing for me to do, because my original plan was you guys were all getting Connor McDavid Leafs jerseys.
See, you had the opportunity to bury us.
Yeah, but I'm also not a fucking terrible person. I'm more of a narcissist. So I'd rather you guys have Coom Fan shirts.
Fine.
I want to go ahead and thank our friends at Sherwood Ford, the Giant, and Pog for making this all possible. Go check them out. Again, Sherwood Ford on Twitter is at Sherwood Ford, on Instagram is at Sherwood Ford_the Giant, and go check out thepogstore.com and make your life smell a little fresher. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Shout out Damien.
Best wishes.